Welcome back to another episode of Light Beer, Dark Money. I'm Sean Noble.
I'm Chris Clements.
And it is Wednesday. March. Already.
It's Ash Wednesday.
Ash Wednesday.
Yeah. I don't see any ashes on your forehead.
I haven't been to Mass yet.
Yeah. You didn't want that to interfere with our recording, I'm sure.
No, if I had, I didn't get
You would
up,
wear them proudly.
Yeah, I didn't get up quite early enough. Real quick story on Ash Wednesday.
Yeah.
When I first moved to D.C., and I don't know why this had never happened in my life before, but it was a Wednesday. I'm walking through the halls of the Canna building, and I see a guy walk by, and he's got some dirt on his forehead. And I was like,
Yeah.
Didn't say anything. And then I see a girl walk by, and she's got like a lot of dirt on her forehead. And I stopped, and I kind of looked, and the person's walking with me, I can't remember who it was like, "Oh, it's Ash Wednesday." I'm like,
and you're like, what?
What does that mean? I grew up in Sholo. We had a Catholic church. St. Mary's was, is it St. Mary's?
Yeah.
In Sholo?
Oh, you're right.
No, St. Rita's.
Okay. There is a St. Mary's.
In Sholo?
In Pine Top.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, there was St. Rita's was the Catholic church pretty close to where I lived. But yeah, I mean, it just never occurred to me. It was literally my first experience. It was 1990, probably 1995, 96.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also you were Mormon.
Yeah.
So it's a little different.
But
But even the evangelicals kind of look at it and go, okay, I don't get it. But
yeah.
Because I was raised Heinz 57 with
Right.
all of it,
Right.
like I really appreciate the reverence of it.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah, it's an important end. Lent is the whole Mardi Gras, and now it's Ash Wednesday. So, everyone who wants to can, do what they're going to do for Lent, give something up, try to do better at something.
Yeah, I take Lent very seriously.
Yeah.
And I used to give up. I never gave up drinking because we were in the industry, and it was really difficult to do. Now, if I wanted to give up drinking, it wouldn't really matter because I have maybe a glass of wine every couple weeks. Yeah. So I used to give up like Diet Coke and caffeine, and that was rough.
That's rough. Yeah, I'm not.
I'm
brave
not
enough
doing
to
that
do
again.
Yet.
I mean, I barely drink any Diet Coke now, so I don't know what I'm gonna give up. I think it's more about giving in.
Yeah.
And so that's that.
Well,
those are the things that I try to focus on during Lent. Like, what am I going to do more of to pursue Jesus? Because that's really what I should be thinking about.
Well, and one of the things that I am going to do as a part of Lent is I have a commitment to be more kind to the kids, to have more patience.
Dads are hard on their kids.
Well, especially dads who had tough dads.
Yeah.
And I had a tough dad. And I've realized as an older dad that my patience is wearing thin.
Well, because we're so see this is where we have a lot of discussion in our household. I keep getting the refrain back that I'm much harder on Preston, my son, than Campbell, my 11-year-old. And I've tried to explain to my wife, that's just sort of the way it is.
Yeah.
Fathers are going to push their sons because they see their sons will do things that they see in themselves that they don't like.
Yeah.
And they want to correct them before they go down that path that they've been on. And with their daughters, it's just different.
Yeah.
It's just different. I saw my dad do the same. My dad he wasn't hard on me, but he was really firm with me, and he pushed me, especially when I got into adolescence. My sister could have gotten away with murder.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is in many ways.
Yep.
And, oh, well.
Yeah. So we hit the faith part. There's been a lot going on.
Let's talk about freedom.
So let's rewind back to Friday. A lot. I feel like we're in a situation, and we've been talking about this a lot. We have a month's worth of news in 4 days.
Yes.
Maybe 2 months worth of news in 4 days. So on Friday, there was a shocking, and I'll just say it was shocking, It wasn't surprising per se, but it was shocking to watch. An exchange in the White House, in the Oval Office, between J.D. Vance, Zelensky, with Trump jumping in as well. And it was, the immediate reaction was very interesting because if you are a Trump supporter, you were like, oh, Zelensky's an asshole. He was just being rude and didn't say thank you. And if you were a Trump hater, you were like, I can't believe that the president of the United States just crapped all over, our ally. I mean, there was no in between. And
Unless you're people like us.
well, I mean, I guess. Did you see it in between? I did. I should say yes. You're right, because I had some initial reactions, then I had some other reactions, and then I went. I made sure that I watched the entire thing to get the context, and what was ultimately JD, was saying it what he was thinking, and then Zelensky says, "Hey, can I ask you a question about that?" and kind of pushes back. And JD didn't take that very well. So Zelensky could have kept his mouth shut and things would have been fine. But then when he asked JD a question, JD could have pulled back a little bit and everything probably would have been okay. But it just kind of escalated because they both have, strong feelings. And then Trump basically blew it up, which, yeah. And now, fast forward 4 days, Zelensky sent a letter, said, "Hey, we're ready to do whatever deal you want."
Well, I think there's more context that we need to talk about. Number one, Zelensky had a meeting with several senators beforehand. The refrain of the left afterwards that this was a setup. You can always tell when the left is speaking,
covering their ass,
or speaking something out loud. This was a setup on their end, and it was a setup to try to challenge Trump to do more with aid and do more with security. Zelensky came in, and his body language, you've watched the body language, it's defiant. He's trying to, we call this retrade the deal. And this deal had been traded and retraded all week long. People forget about this, that we have had. The Treasury Secretary went to Ukraine. We had a podcast last week with Mark Thiessen. All this has been teed up for Zelensky to benefit from, completely benefit from. He came in rather confrontational. Now, at the beginning, I think the analysis of Trump being magnanimous and being, this is going to be great. It's going to be great for your country. We're going to get this done. And then Zelensky keeps trying to retrade the deal during the press conference. And I think the analysis of, you need to read the room and understand where you are now. You're not, this is not the Biden administration. I know you've been talking with all the Biden people about what you should and shouldn't do. And it's really, they're very desperate for Trump not to have a win. But you've got Hegseth in there, you've got JD, you've got other people that met with you, including the Treasury Secretary, who you haven't been really cooperative over the last week. And you've been saying some things that are not helpful. And you come in and you're my chest is puffed up. You will do what I say. And I think JD had enough. And so he just threw the whole thing out there. He made his statement about diplomacy. He made his statement about what the country wanted to do. I think the turning point was when Zelensky said that you have this big ocean and you don't feel war, but someday you will. Or to that extent, I'm paraphrasing. But that is when Trump
that's when
was
Trump
like,
engaged.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
You're not going to know what we're going to feel or not feel. And that's when he had, and yes, did JD kind of throw the grenade out there? I think there's some truth to that. But I think JD could already see things going off the rails. And at that point, it just, you're right. It just blew up.
Well, and I mean, look, at the end of the day, Trump is a deal maker. And so he saw that things weren't going as expected from the standpoint. I mean, literally, this was just supposed to be a pro forma, like the deal was done. We just need to sign the paperwork, have lunch, toast. And, that didn't work. It didn't happen. So he was like, nope, we're going to walk away. And then he pulls aid, announced a couple days ago, and Europe does this emergency meeting and says, "Oh, we're going to help you." And Zelensky's reaction, Mr. Trump, I'd like to have that deal, because he recognizes that Europe can't do what the Americans can do.
No, the aid that they were proposing was paltry. It was peanuts. And by the way, their equipment, they have nothing. People forget Europe's security guarantee is America. And we had this discussion last week, I think, with Mark. We have how many, and we were talking about this yesterday. How many bases do we have in Germany? 4, 5, 100,000 troops? It's why the Germans, tout their welfare state, as the, the example of the world, because we're their security guarantee.
Yeah. Well, and I have been giving this some thought over the last week, and because I have, as I said on the podcast with Thiessen, and I've said it in previous podcasts, that I am, I revere Reagan, and so when it came to, conflict with Russia, I've always been anti-Russia, anti-Soviets, and have constantly said, look, the supporting the Ukrainians is a really good deal, ROI, on destroying Soviet military capability,
which they've
done.
800,000 Russians are dead,
and now but as I've looked at the reaction of the European Union and the member states of NATO, I don't think it is outside the realm of discussion, which has been floated, that the United States leaves NATO, and that's very dramatic. That'd be a very dramatic
but
move.
no one has proposed that, and even Trump hasn't proposed that. The only thing that Trump has proposed is that NATO, the countries in NATO, pay their fair share.
Yeah. Well, but there's got to be a consequence if they don't. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, as a person who appreciated what Reagan did in taking down communism, I feel like the Europeans have absolutely crapped the bed when it came to their responsibilities with NATO. Now,
completely.
That's just abundantly clear. And if it takes the threat of the United States leaving NATO to get them in gear, I'm all for it. Because at the end of the day, the purpose of NATO was to stop
Russian.
Well, it was stop the Nazis, which they did, but then to stop communism, right? Was to stop the spread of communism.
Yeah.
And we succeeded. I mean, we succeeded. The communism fell. I mean, there's still obviously China and Putin is, make no mistake, he's communist. But when Biden was so weak as to telegraph to Putin, now's the time to go, dude. And the Europeans did basically nothing to protect Ukraine, then it showed that NATO was useless.
Well, I'm glad you finally said it. The Europeans have been morally bankrupt in their obligations to not only themselves, but to their obligations to NATO and the EU for quite some time. And I think J.D. Vance was right to go to Europe in the last 2 weeks ago,
right,
and call them out on both their moral, depravity in terms of free speech and jailing people for praying in front of abortion clinics and crazy stuff like that, but also their lack of commitment to the alliance, to the greatest alliance that has ever been created.
Yeah.
And that commitment is now shining through because of what has happened in Ukraine. And it's America that's having to go in, thankfully, because of groups like AI and partisan and have come up with a way that to resurrect Ukraine, to rebuild the country, and still get repaid.
Yeah.
And make it an economic deal. That seems totally foreign to the Europeans.
Right. Well, because they've gotten a free pass.
That's like, why
60 years.
Why is America doing that? That doesn't seem fair. It's like, we have 170, 200, 300 billion in it, whatever number you want to use, depending on what you're looking at. And to Trump, he looks at the arc of history as America gets repaid. And you've said this really well on the show. America gets repaid for what we do. And if we're not going to, somehow we're going to get repaid for Ukraine.
Well, it's ultimately it's the minerals deal.
And
right?
I don't know if our listeners are going to like this, but two things can be true at the same time. And I think Zelensky proved it the other day. Putin can be a mass murderer and an evil person, and Zelensky can still be a comedian and a clown.
Well,
and he made it clear he wanted the train to keep rolling. He wanted the money to keep rolling. He didn't want peace. I think that's totally true. And he got smacked on it. He got called out on it because, no, you don't seem to understand. There's a new sheriff in town. The money's gone. We've got to end the war. You're going to accept what we negotiate because you're not in a position. What Trump kept saying during the press conference, you hold no cards.
Yeah, there are no cards.
You have nothing. You're done. It's over. He's puffing up his chest. He can't even wear a suit in the Oval Office. And he doesn't get it. And so he what does he do? Goes on Fox News, doesn't apologize, doubles down, goes back to Europe, hat in hand, realizes these people can't help me either. What am I going to do? And I insulted the president. I insulted the vice president by calling him JD. Oh, what diplomacy to speak of JD? And I was like, oh God, here we go.
Well, yeah. So the Europeans can't deliver. So he comes back with a letter to the president that says, "Okay, we're ready to deal." Which good. Let's get this done.
That was good news last night.
Yeah, it was.
And we'll see what he does.
So set that aside because that was old news. The new news was last night with
was over the weekend
with the presidential address. Not technically a State of the Union because it's not a State of the Union at the first address when the president's only been in office for 40 some days. But it was long. 100 minutes.
It was long, but it was structured in a way it didn't seem long.
Yeah, it didn't seem as long as it was.
And the call to the audience was the best, I think, since Reagan.
No question. That's exactly what I was going to say, is that he used the balcony better than anybody since Reagan did it the first time.
Clinton did that well too, but I mean, give credit where credit's due. Reagan really did it well.
Well, Reagan was the first.
He's the one who started.
Yeah.
But last night, I thought, reminded me a lot of that, hearkened to that.
Yeah. Well, and there was some, the fact that he signed the executive order during the speech showed it, with renaming the conservation area or whatever.
Yeah.
The
Her
people
mom
that
is there. She's bawling.
The people that he highlighted and juxtaposed with the reaction from the Democrats, which was absolutely pathetic. You can't stand up and applaud a 13-year-old cancer survivor who wants to be a cop and who was just awarded, an honorary membership to the Secret Service. That was a wonderful gift to this kid.
Those are called gimmies.
If you can't stand up and applaud that, you are not human.
No.
You have no humanity. And it was one thing for Al Green, the gadfly he is. He's a Texas member, been there for decades, 20-some years.
Is that real gold on that cane?
Yeah, maybe. He filed articles of impeachment against Trump last time. He's filing articles of impeachment against Trump this time. I mean, he's not a serious member of Congress. And he's up there waving his cane and wouldn't shut up. I mean, I think he purposefully wanted to be thrown out because he needed to have a little attention. The actions of you remember when Biden came and gave the State of the Union. The Republicans stood up and clapped as he came in. They even
course.
occasionally clapped at things that he said, applauded. They were generous in their applause to the things that he pointed out when he had people in the balcony, because those are almost always very bipartisan type things that
Yeah.
you're talking about, or things that are just heartwarming, that aren't really a policy thing. I mean, the Corey, not going to be able to get his last name right.
Oh,
The
the family,
the man that was killed on in Butler.
in Butler, yeah, and his family was there.
That was a beautiful tribute. But
All the tributes were amazing.
Yeah.
But it is about policy, and it is about their policy failures, and that's why they can't stand. The border is a failure, and our two senators are clowns. They could not even stand because they've done nothing when it comes to the border. And when it comes to these illegals coming in and murdering innocent people and raping innocent people, they can't take any accountability for that.
I'll push back on that a little bit, because they both voted for the Laken Riley.
Then why not stand?
And they actually, I think they may have both co-sponsored it. I know Ruben Gallego co-sponsored it. I'm
why
not sure
not
about
stand?
Mark Kelly.
Why not stand?
I don't know.
Why not be an outlier?
Maybe they did,
or are
we didn't
you
see
just
it.
a puppet?
I just didn't, as a general group.
Yeah,
you did
No,
not
I
see
understand
Democrats.
that.
It could be that Mark and Ruben did it
No,
individually.
you'll be hearing about it this morning. You're not, and
wow.
there'd be footage. They'd be saying, "I applaud that." I look at Mark's feed; it's not happening. Where is Mark Kelly?
Where is Mark Kelly? Well,
Where is
he was in the chamber last night. I saw him on camera, because there was a moment in which, because he's sitting next to the Delaware senator. God, what's his name? Buddies with Chris Coons.
Okay.
And at one point, Chris Coons is just like, oh my gosh, we're the big sigh of like, we're so defeated.
Well, and they looked, they were holding. There was a whole group of Democrats in the back holding small little signs, and that's really what they were. They were small.
Yeah,
they were tiny. They
hard to read.
They looked defeated and beaten.
Yeah.
You even had the girl who had a traumatic brain injury from the trans guy, a volleyball player who basically, slammed the ball in her head. Earlier that day, Democrats wouldn't even vote to move forward a bill that would ban, trans athletes from playing in women's sports.
Yes.
It makes no sense at all. This is where Trump keeps winning. These are 80-20 issues, ladies and gentlemen. 80-20 issues. This is an easy vote for Mark Kelly and Ruben Gallego. An easy vote. Everyone in the state, except for a small pocket, would be like, yes, thank you.
Well, and what makes it even more astounding is that you had Democrat women, a big swath of them, wearing pink.
Yeah.
As a stand of solidarity for women's rights. And yet every one of those people voted against the women, keeping men out of women's sports.
Yeah, every single one.
It
makes no sense. The hypocrisy is unbelievable.
It just...
And then the polling that I saw this morning after the speech, through the roof.
Oh,
for the president.
The Democrats so failed at... I mean, it's one thing, the problem is, because of how they acted, it made Trump look even stronger.
Well, and he didn't react.
Right. He didn't take
that was the other thing that I was really impressed with, because in the past he would take the bait. He didn't take any of the bait.
I mean, when Al Green was yelling at him,
he's like he just let it go, and he was very prepared. He was very well coached in that regard. Or he's just seasoned enough. He got shot over the summer, so he's just like, listen, I really don't care about you guys.
Al Green,
anymore.
You don't scare me.
And he even called them out. He said, you're not going to stand for one of my proposals. And then he said on the tax issue, I thought was great, because you're going to vote for these tax issues, or else you're not going to win another election. Right. Because if you're not for no tax on tips, not for no tax on Social Security, and everything else I've outlined, there's a problem with you. Yeah. If there ever was a middle class tax cut, there it is.
How could you be a Democrat claiming that you are for the middle class and vote against the no tax on tips and against no tax on Social Security benefits?
Oh my gosh.
You can't.
You can't.
You can't. You can't, with good conscience, say you're for the middle class and then vote against those proposals.
No.
So it'll be fascinating to see what happens.
Yeah. And then they started kind of filing out at the end. Bernie Sanders left early.
Well, there are a bunch of them left early.
Yeah.
I mean, like a whole bunch of empty seats near the end because, I don't know whether
Well,
it was
they had to get to
scheduled,
MSNBC and do
but
their
you had
bites.
there was a concerted effort of people leaving, at certain points during the speech, and I don't know whether it was personal or if they'd actually planned. Okay, you go at this point, you go at this point.
Yeah, maybe.
Who knows? But it made the Democrats look small and petty and directionless because they don't have anything. And it was interesting. I listened to, or I saw a quote from a Democratic strategist who's like, well, they felt like they needed to do something. That wasn't the thing to do.
No, actually what they needed to do was embrace the issues where Americans are unified.
Yes.
And when it comes to the border, Americans are unified. They like what this president's doing. When it comes to DOGE,
yeah,
Americans overwhelmingly like
well,
what
and
he's doing.
I thought it was brilliant for the president to tick through.
Oh my gosh, he kept. That's why the speech was so long, because he kept going
through the not only the crazy spending that they've rooted out,
countries you've never heard of before.
Yeah, I mean that whole list that was great, and then the Social Security one, which. There's a lot of a lot of Democrats are tweeting, "Wow, that's proven to be wrong." Well, it's not really, because
they kept saying not true, false. Well, what's false?
Yeah,
if it's in the database,
yeah,
if they're pulling it from the database, it's been revealed that the Treasury Department has not sent out a check that they're supposed to.
They claim that there is a claim that Social Security automatically stops sending checks to anyone over the age of 115, but that's just a claim. I mean, do we have proof of that? And I don't. I mean, so that stuff's going to get litigated. But the point is, the fact that you even have people listed on the rolls.
Oh my gosh.
That does raise questions.
That are older than the country.
Older than the country.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, 360.
Well, which begs the question: is it fraud? Are these, obviously it's fraud, but who are these people? Are they illegals that have taken Social Security numbers and then
Yes, it's possible. It's possible.
I think that's where it is.
It's also possible that it's a programming issue because somebody pointed out that this was programmed on COBOL, and there's date issues. I don't had something to do with Y2K. I don't know.
COBOL.
Yeah, it's a program.
No, I know what it is.
You do?
I mean,
I'd never heard of it.
I've heard. Yes, I know what it is, but I hadn't heard of that in a very long time.
Somebody some lefty organization obviously was like, oh no, it's COBOL, and that's why it's set on program. Let's let Doge do their thing. They'll get to the bottom of it. We'll know at some point when it's actually all vetted, and
the things they were booing, even booing when he was talking about ordering people back to work.
Yeah.
It just didn't make any sense in the federal government. Like 90% of the employees of the federal government haven't been to work.
Haven't been into the office.
In the office.
And when most Americans go to work.
Yes.
In an office, at a workplace.
Yes.
They have to show up.
They have to do something.
Why is this a problem? I mean, that you are right.
In buildings that our tax dollars are paying for, in the hundreds of millions of dollars.
Have you seen the latest list of the GAO?
No.
GSA's list of properties, federal properties for sale.
For sale? No,
yeah, it's huge. It's awesome.
Is it?
It's just amazing. It's a fire sale.
Well, because they're empty.
Yeah.
And we've been paying
Literally,
for them to be
empty. Yeah.
And a lot of, you're going to find out after Doge does their thing and we get really into the budget, part of this year, you're going to find that a lot of agencies can be, from a space perspective, be combined because of personnel needs. And a lot of personnel doesn't even need to be in Washington. I've said this for a long time. Interior needs to be in Denver or Utah
Yeah.
or Arizona for that matter.
Yeah. Well, I would say,
BLM needs
frankly,
Bureau of Land Management, not the other BLM, needs to be here.
Interior Interior needs to be in the West
Yeah.
for sure. BLM probably needs to be in Utah or Arizona because that's
Wyoming.
where the I don't know how much BLM land is there in Wyoming though. Yeah. I mean, there's
It's
Utah and Arizona.
between Nevada,
Oh,
Utah,
Nevada
and Arizona.
has a ton too. Yeah,
Nevada has a ton. But between Utah, Arizona, and Nevada, just pick a spot.
Yeah. Maybe just be
it needs to be in the West.
Yeah.
It has no business being in the Beltway at all.
Just some great moments.
It was his best speech.
It was a great speech. And I also think that part of the reason it was long is because they gave him a lot of applauses.
They gave him a lot of applauses, and the whole interruptions at the beginning.
Yeah.
The laundry list of stuff that they found with Doge that took a while, but then the call to the audience. Once he entered that phase of the speech, that was really great.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that the way he did it, and he did it really well, and he finished strong. He finished well.
Yes.
And he's unapologetic. I thought the way he started off, kind of rubbing the Democrats' nose in the election, I was like, oh gosh, they know you won.
Yeah.
They're sitting there just, hating themselves, and they have nothing. But then they doubled down on all these other things where they could have shown some class, and they could have shown that, hey, America, we're willing to meet you in the middle on these issues. And we're going to show that we understand that you care about these issues, that you care about wasteful spending in government, you care about the tax burden, you care about the regulatory burden, and you care about illegal immigration, and you care about men playing in women's sports.
Yeah.
That might seem a fringe issue to a lot of people, but it's an 80-20 issue that Donald Trump decisively won on.
Yeah, no question. Well, the other thing I thought was interesting is his little asides to his cabinet.
Yeah.
Bobby got a shout out. Pam Bondi got a couple. We'll get back to her in a second. You had Cash got a shout out.
Yeah.
Brooke Rollins got a shout out.
Yeah.
On the egg prices.
I like Brooke. I've met Brooke.
No,
she's great.
Awesome.
That's an agency you're going to find doesn't need all the space they need. That will be an agency that will be shrunk and consolidated.
Well, HHS
quickly.
as well. I think that's over. That's bloated. I mean, Bobby Kennedy is gonna get going on that. Let's talk about Pam Bondi.
You want to talk about Pam Bondi?
Yeah.
You want to talk about the whole debacle?
I want to talk about the debacle of the
Friday?
Epstein files. Was that Friday?
We've never really
Thursday?
talked about Pam Bondi, so I'm glad we're talking about her because she has to be my least favorite of the cabinet. Yeah. I was for Mike Davis of what's the group he's part of? American Legal Project or whatever it was. I thought he would have been a great AG, and I thought Pam was sort of a default.
Well, she was not the first pick.
Well,
because first pick would have been a disaster.
Yes.
But look, I think that what concerns me is the two things. One, apparently, she purposefully told her staff not to tell the White House that they were handing out these binders to these
conservative influencers. And there was really nothing in the binders.
There's nothing in the binders that was new. It was all old stuff.
Yeah.
And then because it turns out that SDNY, the Southern District of New York, the U.S. Attorney's Office was hiding files from others, and that FBI.
But shouldn't she have known that ahead of time?
Yeah.
It just seems so staged and political about something that people are honestly concerned about.
And this is a serious issue, and you need to take it seriously.
Absolutely.
It looked like a circus.
this is not something.
These binders that they're holding up. It's just
You do not need to be playing performative politics with something this serious that people are really disgusted by. And those who want to take it seriously, like you and I, don't care who it implicates.
Yeah. As I said before, I've said this. I'm 100% certain that there will be someone on that list that as of today, I
And we
respect.
know who's on the list. I mean,
What?
we know the list.
I don't think we know the whole list.
Well,
I absolutely don't think we know the whole list. I think that's the whole reason we don't have the list, is because there are literally people on there that are going to shock some of us, and I'm preemptively saying I'm sad.
yeah,
Because I'm sure there's going to be somebody on there, maybe more, that I have respect and admiration for as of today.
yeah,
And that's going to sadden me if.
yeah. But playing performative politics like that with the
No, this is
blinders and giving those conservative influencers and requesting they put a lid on it until like 3:00 or whatever it was, and it's old. It's stuff like the Democrats do. That's what it reminded me of. Like,
Yeah, it was just
you're trying to plan stuff and stir things up, and it's like,
it was a
what are you
stunt,
doing? It's
and
a stunt,
and it came across as a stunt.
yeah. And then sending that letter to Cash, and I think Cash is a pretty serious guy. And I'm sure he was like, "What the heck are you doing?
Yeah,
You didn't have to do all this performative stuff. You could have picked up the phone,
right.
told me who your source is, who you keep spouting off on Hannity,
And I'll go take care of it.
and I'll go take care of it, because that's kind of what I do.
Right.
I'm going to
It's
go
his
take
job.
care of it, and I'm not going to. If you've noticed, Cash over the last 2 weeks, he's kind of faded,
He's
like
been
Homer
pretty
Simpson
quiet.
into the bushes. Like he is working.
I don't know whether he's fading back or if he's just put his head down and he's just getting to work.
I think he's a really serious person.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of really serious people on that cabinet who you've not seen on Fox News every night or OAN every night, and they just want to go and get the job done.
Yeah.
Pam's been on a show every freaking night.
Has she?
Oh, almost every night.
Yeah, see,
she
I
needs to
don't watch
shut up and
TV.
go do her job.
Yeah. Agreed. So
I think I'm not.
shifting gears completely.
Let's shift gears completely.
So was it Sunday? When were the Oscars? Must have been Sunday.
No, I didn't watch them.
I did. I didn't watch all.
Why?
I watched some of it. Well,
Why do you do such
interesting.
things to yourself?
Because I know that we have listeners
We
who
do
care a little bit about popular culture, but don't want to suffer.
I know my wife watched them. I left. I went to I went to bed. I think.
It was interesting. I was, excuse me, I was really actually entertained and pretty happy. I thought Conan O'Brien did a pretty good job.
Okay.
There were a couple little bits that didn't really work. A couple references that I didn't get at all. I had to get explained to me by my wife. Adam Sandler had what I thought was a pretty funny moment. My wife, Alyssa, was like, I don't think he actually got the groove, so questions about that.
Why was Happy Gilmore too up for an award?
No, I don't know. He was just, he was underdressed. So it was a little, maybe they didn't mention Fetterman.
The
but
Oscars normally have a lot of people underdressed on the red carpet.
Yes. Well, he was not dressed up. Okay. Let's put it that way. But my favorite moment of the entire thing was when Kieran Culkin was getting his Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. And he told a story about how, he and his wife, he'd asked his wife if they could have a third kid. They have two kids, and, there's some kind of a deal about his work. And then she says, if you get an Oscar, if you get an Academy Award for this, what the show he was in, which was Pain, something.
I don't know.
What? A Real Pain. Thank you, Alex, our intrepid producer. If you get the Oscar, we can have 4. And so he didn't tell anybody that. They never talked about it since that night, which would have been a couple years ago. And he tells the story on stage. And he says, "Do you remember that, honey?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I just thought it was so charming
Yeah.
that here's a guy who tells a story about having more kids, not telling a story about, "I'm grateful that I had an abortion so I could do my career." You know,
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it was a charming moment that was wholesome, that was a great example of how we should be looking at life. I mean, he is celebrating life in the sense that it's a gift to be able to have 2, 3, 4, and I'm just a huge fan of him anyway. So maybe I'm biased as well because I thought his acting in Succession was as Roman. What's the last name? Did you watch Succession?
No.
Oh, yeah. Anyway,
No, I've been told I should.
you should. He was phenomenal in
Yeah.
that show, and so I'm a big fan of him anyway. So I just thought that was a great moment for the Oscars. Now, it went well. Had some great the kickoff with Ariana Grande and I can't remember the name of the woman from Wicked.
Yeah, from Wicked.
Probably the best musical performance
Well, yeah. I mean,
I've seen at the Oscars
because
ever.
that movie actually was one of the better feel good movies of the year.
Yeah,
so
but the fact that they performed
was
it as
well
well as
done.
they did live it was a testament. I mean, this woman has got
But then
real
they
talent.
give but then they go off the rails. And I didn't watch, but I've listened to the analysis and some of the other things. I mean, giving the best documentary to a truly anti-Semitic,
That's where I was going.
anti-Israel,
Is that it was going
piece
well,
of garbage.
and then it went totally off the
Yeah.
rails.
And not even giving a hearing to Matt Walsh's documentary, Am I Racist, which was the number one documentary, grossing documentary of the year, and brilliantly done. But no, we don't do that.
Yeah.
But we're going to give the best documentary to an anti-Semitic tropey,
Not just anti-Semitic, pro-Hamas.
Yeah, pro-Hamas,
pro-Hamas
piece of garbage.
Yeah, it was outrageous.
And people were clapping. It just was so bizarre. I did see those clips. I understand Adrian Brody, like his speech went off the rails. The anti-Semitic, pro-Hamas, tropey, disgusting, terrorism that pervades Hollywood right now needs to be in check. And some of the analysis I heard was this is Hollywood at its lowest in many ways.
Yeah.
Even the best picture, one best picture about some sex worker.
Yeah.
And it made like $15 million.
Yeah, it was not the kind of movie that the average viewer is going to go watch.
It made no sense. So
it got like 4 or 5 awards.
If to be considered for best picture, you have to meet all these woke checkpoints and criteria. I think Hollywood is in deep trouble because
that I think is going to change because I mean, not that Reagan was ever going to get
notoriety, it wasn't even that type of movie.
It didn't even get. It was never considered for best picture because it didn't meet the DEI requirements of the cast and crew.
Well, and Dennis Quaid should at least gotten a nod as actor. Because he did that role brilliantly.
I mean, there were times when I was watching, because I've watched that movie 4 or 5 times, that he nailed Reagan.
Yeah.
The mannerisms, the cadence. I mean, it is uncanny how well he did. I mean, just a phenomenal performance.
Well, and look at what you're seeing in alternative media, Angel Studios, other types of media. Faith-based family pictures are on the rise.
Yeah.
And Hollywood doesn't know what to do. They don't know how to embrace it, because these are independent studios that are doing their own thing.
Right.
And some of them are, publicly funded. They're crowdfunded. Angel Studios has been that way for a long time.
Right.
And the tide is turning in a different direction. It's a different world now, and Hollywood proved the other night they haven't quite figured it out.
Well, we'll leave it with this. You're right. Hollywood hasn't proven it, they're always a little bit behind. They think that they're ahead.
No,
They think
not
that they're on the
now.
cutting edge of culture. They're actually lagging, because one of the things that I've both read and noticed, church attendance is on the rise.
Yes. Well,
When we say America is back, it's not just that there's optimism about America. I think there's a renewal of faith in God at this point.
well, and where that's happening is with our young people.
Yeah.
And a renewed faith in God, a renewed, interest in the country and in patriotism and old values. And there's a Pew Research document that just came out. I think that's what you're referencing, that those who identify as Christian or church going and as leveled off is now rising. And that you don't see that in a lot of societies.
No.
You certainly never didn't see that in Europe, which is why Europe is where it is.
Right.
And for America to live up to its promise and its principles, which we embody here at Light Beer Dark Money: faith, freedom, free enterprise. Number one is faith. Without a faith in God, this country will die.
Yep. 100%. On that note, folks.
Yeah. God bless.
Happy Ash Wednesday.
Happy Ash Wednesday.
Take
God
care.
bless.
See ya.